Hi there. I decided to explore one topic right now, which I am seeing a lot of people struggling with. It is idea development in writing or in speaking. Some people think that they just need to develop, or they need to have more ideas, but that's usually not the case. One or two ideas, more than enough to develop. But the question is like, how do you develop ideas well? So here's what we're going to explore in this lesson. Okay, you see this triangle? In a way, that's what should happen in your ideas. Your ideas start with a general point, like we call that as a topic sentence, where you mention the main idea. What is main idea? It's the topic word plus main idea. So if we're talking about hospitals, um, the topic is hospital. What's your main idea about hospitals? Oh, hospitals are becoming very expensive. Okay, now hospitals becoming very expensive is the main idea. So this is how we write effective topic sentences. And after that, what we do is to develop an idea, supporting details. Like, what is supporting details? It's explanation to whatever you said before. It could be reasons, one or two, examples, depending on how many ideas you have in one, or one example at least for a main idea. Maybe if you ask questions like, so, then you could continue explaining the effects or consequences. You might also want to conclude your idea. And this concluding the idea can be done in different ways. It could be just say like, so that's why, and you say what you were talking about, or you might kind of actually skip this part as well. Depends, really. Okay, in other ways, how else we can see this development is by asking questions. I mean, this is my personally favorite way to develop ideas. I just ask myself questions. If I ask myself these questions, I know what to say next. Or I say something, and based on what I just said, I ask myself questions like, what do you mean? Or how? Like, for example. So the purpose of asking such questions is to simply help myself develop and my ideas and explain myself better so that it's easier for the listener or for my reader to read my essay. Right? So you start always with what? And by answering that question of what, you're essentially giving your topic sentence. I mean, so, okay, you might ask me like, okay, what are you going to do in this lesson? I'm going to tell you, well, we are going to work on idea development, how to do this with examples in writing and speaking. Now, why? Well, I don't have to explain why, or I could, because I want people to know how to develop this and how to work on that. And that could really make a big difference in the way they write or speak. And how I'm going to explain? Well, this is how, like that, you see? So how, for example, so you answer these questions, you are going to develop ideas really well. Okay, for example, with one of my classes today, we were talking about the globalization, the topic of globalization. I gave them the example of the drawbacks. So how we do that? This is a short mini plan, right? Where we have 2 points. One idea, one drawback of globalization is the cultural loss. What do you mean? How, for example, brief plan. And then what's your another point? What's another drawback? It's economic inequality. Again, what do you mean? How? For example, like this and example like that. Brief explanation. Yeah. So now how to turn this plan into speaking or writing sample answers. What happens in the speaking is that it's spoken, colloquial, right, with more natural language and everything. So this is how we turn that plan into a part 3 speaking sample answer, for example, but it could be extended into even longer, like part 2, for example, or a shorter version if it was a part 1. So the point is, it's always about developing ideas well. And some people really struggle with idea development in the speaking, right? They might just say something like, there are cultural loss and economic inequality. But if you just say it like that, then it's a very short answer. So what do we do? So as we speak, try to answer these questions kind of mentally. For example, well, globalization definitely has some serious drawbacks. Topic sentence, yeah. So topic words, globalization, and the main idea, serious drawbacks. Now, what do you mean? What is one that drawback? Well, one major issue is the loss of cultural identity. This answering the question of what, because that's where we're introducing the idea. And now, like, what do you mean? As global trends spread, local traditions often get pushed aside. Okay, so this is explanation. Now I want to know, for example, like if you give me an example, I have a perfect image of what's happening in my mind. So, for example, in some Asian countries, young people are now more excited about celebrating Halloween than their own traditional holidays. Okay, so now we have what, um, why or how combined was example. This is one way to develop an idea. Another problem is economic inequality. Big companies and wealthy nations usually gain the most, while workers in poorer countries often get underpaid. A good example is the garment industry in places like Bangladesh, where workers earn very little, even though the brands they work for make huge profits. So while globalization connects the world, it doesn't always do so fairly. Yeah. Again, depending on your language skills or the time you have, you could shorten this or you could extend that. But essentially, that's the structure. Can you see it? Again, we have an idea with a linking word, with a signposting language like another. Then we have the point or explanation of the point with examples and a little bit of conclusion. If you can afford that, if you have the time for it, depending on how well or how fast you can say it while maintaining the natural pace of the speech. Now, we can do the same thing. We can take these ideas, similar development, and turn this into writing paragraph. You can feel free to pause the video at this point and just have a read. Read it and see how the same thing has been developed into more academic writing, where ideas are the same, development is almost pretty much the same. Only the difference is the language. Language is more academic, right? Because that's what we need to do. Speaking needs to be a little bit more spoken, but not too informal though, okay? But it should not also be very formal. And writing could be more academic. We have the same structure. Despite its advantages, globalization has several notable drawbacks. One significant concern is the gradual loss of cultural identity. Vocabulary is getting richer and a little bit different, but ideas are the same. As global trends, media, and consumer products become more dominant, local customs and traditions are often overshadowed. For instance, in many Asian countries, Western holidays like Halloween are now celebrated more widely than traditional cultural events. Another major issue is the widening gap between poor and the rich. While globalization increases profits for multinational corporations and developed nations, workers in low-income countries are frequently underpaid and overworked. A clear example is the garment industry in Bangladesh, where employees receive minimal wages despite producing goods for wealthy global brands. These examples highlight how globalization, while unifying in some ways, can also lead to cultural erosion and deepening inequality. Depending on your language skills, this could be a little bit simpler, easier, but idea development is the same. Topic sentence, one idea, explanation, example, next idea. Yeah. So in terms of the writing, I think it's pretty clear, but in terms of the speaking, if you want it, you can make it shorter. I'm going to give you an example of a level 7-8 answer. What are the drawbacks of globalization? Well, there are several drawbacks of globalization. One is definitely the loss of culture, where people start imitating the foreign cultures or more popular cultures, like the Western culture, through movies, or shows that they watch, and they start imitating and forget about their own culture. Another is where economically people are disadvantaged, especially those that are living in poorer countries. Like think about Bangladesh, where workers are working for big brands, wealthy brands abroad, but they are getting so little for their payment. And this is rather sad. And this is what happens with globalization, or this is one unfortunate effect of globalization on wealth distribution. Okay, that little part was a little too advanced. I apologize, but yeah, this is how we can make it maybe a bit shorter, right? Okay, now let's do the same with another idea. This time we're talking about the benefits of globalization. If you can do the same with the drawbacks, you can just like turn the tables around and look at the other side. What are the benefits? In this way, I try to show you how I planned it in a detailed version, because sometimes to be able to write like this or think like that, you need to know how to develop ideas better, at least in a spoken or in your head, in the spoken version. Just saying like that's one problem or one challenge might be for people to say this in one sentence, this is a second sentence, and this is the third sentence. And they might say it in the pretty much in the same way. And that can result in very short or not so well connected, smoothly transitioned ideas or explanation. So what is really going on in my head when I am planning, when I'm thinking, when I'm writing? I'm going to show you this. So this is how I planned it in the other topic. So my main idea, first of all, was better standards of living. Right? That's a broad idea. Now, what do you mean by broad, like standards of living? How globalization is helping people live better. More people have access, they can have better foreign things, or local business can improve their products or services to compete with global brands. Okay, at this point, I'm asking myself, can you give me an example? Because your ideas are like a little bit dry. I want a more specific point. Local hospitals. This is a personal experience. I recently actually had, I visited a local hospital and I was amazed by the opportunities. And I just thought for a moment to myself, like how this is all happening because of globalization. So this is a real example. And that's what I normally do. Whenever I'm developing ideas or coming up with new ideas, I usually like to link them with some personal experience. This is how it's even easier actually to develop ideas, because you're thinking, you're talking about something you actually have experienced. And it's real in your head, so it's a lot easier. In the past, very small, with lack of advanced technology like machines, for example, this hospital was, and professional staff. They didn't have really. But now, so much better. And they have even rare machines that treat like rare injuries or illnesses like heel spurs. This is also a real thing. This is how everyone is developing and getting better in long run. Do you see like how I'm developing? It's very spoken. These are just ideas. These are not grammatically right or great or vocab-wise. No. I'm just focusing on developing my ideas right now. I didn't actually have to write this down like that, but I am doing this just to show you how I'm thinking. Okay. Now, this part is a little bit of concession. I like to argue. I like to develop my ideas so fully that I ask myself, like, what my critical reader might say against my idea, how they might argue with me by including their opinion and then contradicting their opinion or counter argument. By doing that, I make sure that I develop my idea so well that as a reader, you don't have questions, or as a listener, you don't have questions for my speaking. This is actually what I do. And I think this is something like a high level critical thinking. It's not that difficult, but you just need to know how to do this properly. Although some might argue that because of globalization, economies are suffering, inequalities on the rise, I'd say that these are temporary effects, because due to globalization, those third world countries like Bangladesh are actually receiving opportunities to make some money at least, as opposed to like having nothing when their countries are generally poor. Now, this might seem a little bit too, harsh, but it's the idea. And it's okay, but I don't have to actually write like that, but I might be thinking like that to make my point stronger, and this is how sometimes the things that I write, I can make stuff up, but they need to sound logical, and I need to turn the arguments into relevant points, like for me. Again, these may not have to be necessarily true. I mean, technically, I know some parts are true. And you could say the same thing about Uzbekistan as well, actually. But the point is, I am tailoring my examples, my arguments to fit my arguments. You know what I'm saying? So this is how I do it. So in that way, any idea can be turned into a great idea, depending on how well you develop it. If you do not develop your idea well, even if you had the greatest idea ever, examiners may not be able to understand, and that will be your loss. So that's why it's your responsibility as a writer, as a producer of the language, as a speaker, to explain yourself as much as you can, as well as you can. Okay, this was all for just one idea. What's the second idea? Better cultural awareness. What do you mean? Before globalization, nations were isolated and limited to only themselves. And others were different, caused conflicts, did not understand each other, and life was a bit boring as a result, But after, we can see or travel or experience other cultures, their lifestyles, food, tradition, etc. And this raises awareness and promotes peace. And life is more interesting. For example, Korean noodles. We can try it in Uzbekistan and have this nice appreciation for the Korean culture and cuisine and creativity. While some might say that locals might forget about their own food and culture, I'd say that it's not true. In reality, people just mix and match and add some spice to their diet and make it interesting, or their life in general. So this is how they can be culturally rich, aware, and understanding. And all of this happening thanks to globalization. You see, this is my little kind of a conclusion for the bigger idea, how globalization can be a really positive development. That's it. This is what I'm thinking in my head. And if I simplify and I walk you through like in a slow motion, one idea and second idea. And by the way, if I can think like that, how easy would it be for me to write it up into actual complete sentences and paragraphs? Or how easy would it be for me to actually speak all that? Just think about it. And this way of thinking is actually anybody can do at any level, as long as you have intermediate level, right? Intermediate level of English. This does not have to be that complicated. All you have to do is just ask yourself. You have to come up with one idea and then ask yourself a bunch of questions like why, how, so, what are the impacts? What's the other way around? I mean, like how we might disagree with that idea. Okay, if we shorten this plan, this is what we get. Improved living standards of living. Okay, standard of living. Local business improved to compete with global brands. Okay, access to better products and services as a result. Example, local hospital. Counterpoint, well, some may say inequality is increasing. Response to that counterpoint, nope. Poor countries are actually getting better opportunities. Second point, greater cultural awareness. People can learn about other cultures through food, travel, media, etc. And that promotes understanding, reduces conflict. Life becomes more interesting and diverse. You might actually say that life becomes more interesting and everything is a second point. Well, maybe, but I decided to go with using this idea as a consequence or as an effect of the previous idea. But if you wanted, sure, absolutely, you could write it as a separate point, like the third point. But well, I was going for two, and I wanted to fully explain and say more like that. That's what I just ended up doing this time. Example, Korean noodles, popular in Uzbekistan, shows appreciation for other cultures. Counterpoint, fear of losing local culture, which could actually be part of this one too, But my opinion is, nope, people actually mix culture, add variety, and enrich their lives that way. So this is really cool. Now, using these ideas, you could actually answer the question, right? You could shorten them or lengthen them. Shorter answer for speaking, like what are the benefits of globalization? Topic sentence, remember that structure. Topic sentence, point one, explain, example briefly, and next point, explain, example, like that. Okay, what are the drawbacks of benefits, of globalization? There are several benefits of globalization. One, the major one, is definitely probably the improved living standards. I mean, people have access to better services, better products. Take, for example, the local hospital that I was recently in. I was amazed by how they had this new innovative, pieces of technology and machinery that now they could even treat some rare illnesses. And that is happening because of globalization. Another effect definitely has to be improved cultural understanding and awareness, right? Because we can see different cultures through movies or media, we are understanding them better and appreciating different cultures. So that is helping, life just to be more interesting. Like, for example, I can try Korean noodles without actually going to Korea. And that's really amazing until, I can actually go and try the Korean noodles for myself. So yeah, I think all of this amazing stuff is happening because of globalization, right? This is how a shorter answer is happening when I'm trying to develop myself. I didn't have time to counter argue here. I could, but if you couldn't, for example, if this seems like daunting and a bit difficult, you don't have to mention that. Okay, let's see the written version of that sample idea development for the speaking. I think globalization has brought a lot of positive change, especially when it comes to people's standard of living. For example, local businesses now how to compete with international brands, so they improve their products and services. Even hospitals in smaller towns are better equipped these days. I remember one local clinic that used to be very basic, but now they have advanced machines, even for rare conditions like heel spurs. Some people say globalization increases inequality, but I think that's a more of a short-term issue. At least it gives poor countries like Bangladesh a chance to earn something instead of being completely cut off from global markets. Another great benefit is cultural awareness. Before globalization, countries were more closed off and people didn't really understand each other. But now we can try different foods, learn about new cultures, and even travel more. Like in Uzbekistan, we can eat Korean noodles and enjoy a bit of Korean culture. That would not have been possible before. And even though some worry that people might forget their own traditions, I think most of us just mix things in a good way and become more culturally open. Beautiful paragraph, honestly, really, really beautiful. You could actually even turn it into a part two. You can shorten this, you can extend that. Many people already can speak in a shorter way. For them, the challenge is to develop, extend. This is how you can develop. Okay, now the written version. You can pause the video, have a read. It's actually a bit longer, but it's the same idea, right? The language is more academic. Okay, let's see how this has been done. I want to make my position strong, and I believe globalization has really more benefits than the drawbacks, so that's how I'm writing. I believe that globalization has brought more important benefits, one of which is a better standard of living. As international products and services enter local markets, domestic businesses are forced to improve in order to compete. For example, local hospitals that once lacked advanced technology and skilled staff are now much more developed. In some cases, they collaborate with foreign hospitals or companies and even offer rare treatments, such as machines for heel spurs, which would have been unimaginable in the past. This overall progress means people now have access to better care and services. While some might argue that globalization increases inequality and damages weaker economies, these are often short-term effects. In fact, globalization provides even poorer nations like Bangladesh with opportunities to earn income and grow, which would be nearly impossible without foreign involvement. Another major benefit is increased cultural awareness. In the past, countries were isolated, which sometimes led to misunderstandings and conflict. Today, people can experience different cultures through travel, food, and media. For instance, people in Uzbekistan can now enjoy Korean noodles and learn to appreciate Korean traditions, and creativity. Some worry that this could harm local culture, but in reality, people tend to blend traditions, creating richer, more diverse experiences. Overall, globalization helps people grow economically and culturally. And this is how you do it, right? I hope this was helpful to understand how to develop ideas by asking clearer questions, by knowing what to say next based on what you said before, and asking yourself questions, how to develop two ideas. Again, if developing two ideas like that seems very time consuming for you and you're afraid that you're not going to be able to write like that under exam conditions, well, no worries. You can just develop maybe one, or you can shorten your development. For example, here, for one idea development, which started here, notice how much I am writing until here. Can you shorten this into, 2-3 sentences? Absolutely, right? Totally. You could just say, one of which is better standards of living. Due to collaboration between countries and nations, everybody or all businesses or many businesses are having access to better technology or better advanced technology that can help them improve their products and services. For example, a local hospital in my city now can treat even rare illnesses like heel spurs because of the technology they have from countries like China. That's it. This is how you can shorten it, depending on how much time you have and your language skills, or how fast you are as a writer. If you're not that like fast, then you can develop it more like that. And that is better than just saying globalization is great. It improves products and services. That's it. Yeah, now you know how to develop ideas.